Welcome to the Fox Talks Business Podcast. I'm your host, Tanya Fox, money mentor, business coach, and author. If you're a business owner who's been around the block but still feels stuck in the financial fog or hustling without getting real results, well, you're in the right place. Each week, I'm going to dive into money mastery, mindset shifts, and real-world strategies to help you grow and profit sustainably. You're going to hear unfiltered conversations, bold ideas, and practical, proven ways to start growing your business. So if you're ready to break past the plateau, make more, stress less, and have fun doing it, let's dive in. Hello, Foxy listeners. Welcome to the show today. Now, I know a lot of you have been, in our chat rooms and stuff like that, have been talking about delegation, the fear of, perfectionism and all of that other stuff. And you were like, I really don't know how to overcome this. And as I always tell you, if you have an issue, if I'm not the one who's going to solve it, I'm going to find the person. And I found the person. Cathy, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's give a little bit of background of you. Tell us kind of a little bit of your story for those that are just experiencing you for the first time.
Sure. I started off as a business management consultant in operations with a local firm in Vancouver, Washington, and working with all these different business owners of varying, size and history. It was so difficult to get them out of the weeds of their own business so they can kind of have that eagle-eyed view over everything. And because of this, I kind of hemmed and hawed about like what could be a good solution in my own local business community that I see this need. And it was virtual assisting. So I realized it was getting more mainstream. This was back in 2018, prior to COVID. And so I started day one as an agency, and now I have a US based VA agency with a team of 20 amazing individuals across the country that help support small business owners and nonprofit organizations with their administrative tasks.
Well, and I think this is what most entrepreneurs come up against, right? Because the idea when you first go into the business, you have it in your head that you're going to kind of be wearing all of the hats. But obviously, none of us go in to go, oh, yeah, no, I want to pull 18-hour days every single day for the rest of my life. That's not why we do it.
That's
But
exactly
then
right.
you kind of get into that sort of moment where you're like, okay, now I'm ready to kind of hand over the reins. But there's fear that comes around that, which you were mentioning a lot of your clients. Let's talk a little bit about what your experience has been like around that with, your clients or even yourself.
Absolutely. There's so much fear when it comes to, managing your own business, especially if you have like a management background. It's so much easier to manage something that's not yours, that's not your baby. And so many business owners find themselves terrified at the thought of hiring employees because they know that that can be pretty complicated. There could be some legal implications to that. And then they also think, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to hire somebody part-time or full-time right off the bat, and I'm going to have to
Mm-hmm.
find enough work for them to justify the cost of that. And so many of us need support well before even a part-time person.
Mm-hmm.
We could even feel support even with just 10 hours a month. And so that's really what virtual assisting can offer is like kind of that fractional support without feeling like you have to really deep dive invest in, this individual. And between that, like having to come to the realization that you're in a position where you need help, there's so many of us that, we tell ourselves, well, we've been doing it all so far. We should continue doing it now. Like I'm going to be less of a business owner if I don't do all of it. Or
Right.
we have to battle against the idea that like, well, nobody's going to be able to do it as well as I do. Nobody's going to, or nobody wants to do the work that I don't want to do. All of these different reasonings as to why we shouldn't hire, which really puts us at a disadvantage when it comes to scaling.
Well, and I think a lot of the times too, like I know even for myself, when I first started, really delegating, thought the same thing. Because, of course, the first tasks that I want to delegate are the ones that I hate doing,
Yeah.
which a lot of my listeners know is filing, drove me nuts. And I found like an at-home mom that was like, oh my God, I love organizing stuff. And so
Yep.
she would come in, it would like kind of get her out of the house and stuff like that. Once that started happening, it was like, I wish I would have had the hindsight to sort of go, that was such a relief. Like, I didn't realize how much this tiny task that I was like, oh, okay, I have to do this. And like how much like convincing of today is the day I have to do it, or it was piling up or whatever, and I didn't realize what the cost was for me continuing to do these tasks that I didn't like. Do you find that is a driving thing for a lot of people too, that they don't realize how much it's actually costing them by continuing to do it themselves?
Absolutely. I think all of us in some way have, especially when it comes to tasks that we do not want to do or, for whatever reason, there's such an emotional tie to that task. We feel guilt, we feel shame, we haven't done this yet. It gets shoved to the end, the bottom of the pile. One of which is like invoicing. So many people have such an emotional attachment to money,
Mm-hmm.
asking for money. This is the lifeblood of your business, the revenue that's coming in. And why are we so stuck? Because we have, all of these money habits that, we've carried along our whole life. And it could really impact your business long term. And the great thing is like you hand off invoicing to somebody else, they don't care about asking for your money for you. And so the idea of I could give this to somebody who not only wants to do it and I don't, then I don't want to do it. It's giving an opportunity to, to for somebody to make money for their own family. It's really a gift to hand over the tasks that you don't want to do because there's always going to be somebody out there that is would be absolutely happy to do it.
Yeah. Well, and then just like recirculating your time into those things, either that you do
Yes.
enjoy or that are going to, sort of grow your business. So if someone's out there and they're like, okay, I know I need this. I'm not able to do everything myself, because that's usually the point it hits, right? You're not keeping up with everything,
Yeah.
or there's always something that's falling through the cracks of, I'm supposed to be doing this, I know I should do this, and then you look back and you go, oh my God, I haven't posted for like a week and a half, or gosh, I haven't sent invoices out, I'm starting to get broke, and all of those other
Yeah.
things. But do you have any advice for those business owners who are like, okay, I'm ready to start doing this, but I don't know what to start giving away, because I feel like I still, like you said, I'm in that feeling of like still feeling like I have to touch everything. How do you
Yeah.
decide?
There's a couple ways that you can do it. Easiest way is to figure out what tasks you don't like doing. And like, all right, hand over something that I just don't want to do. Hand over something that you don't do well, like you feel like you don't do well. Hand over something that you know that you shouldn't be doing. It's, I think a lot of us have this a kind of a general idea after we've spent the whole day doing what we're really good at, and then going home or sitting down and realizing you have 4 more hours of admin work in front of you, and you're just thinking when you're slogging through it, I shouldn't be doing this. That's the first thing you should be delegating. Is it, are you finding yourself, staring at your email all day long and you know that that's just really eating up your time? Is it following up with certain, parts of your business or, leads or clients? Like what is going to offload a certain amount of time that you can reinvest in your business in a different, more revenue generating way? So,
Well, and I think
yeah.
it's always good to have that other eye, because like as an example, I have one client that we set her up to have somebody come in, and it wasn't like it was an in-house person that was staying with her, and it was really funny because the first thing that she did was like clean up her inbox, right? Because she was one of those people that had like 500 emails a day come in, and to have somebody else who was very impartial, who looked back and went, okay, on all of these subscriptions, she's literally just deleting them. So she like unsubscribed her, and it was really funny because afterwards, when I had a meeting with the three of them, I was like, so how? And she was like, I unsubscribed her from 42 publications of stuff that she hasn't opened in over 2 months.
There you
And
go.
she's like, oh, she was great. My inbox has been like super empty. And she was like, oh, no, that I don't have that many. But she was like you said, she had that emotional attachment of like, no, I signed up to this for a reason, or I know this person, or I'm on this
Yeah.
list. I don't want them to get mad at me for like deleting, right? Whereas her sister was like, you're not even looking at this. I'm not subscribing you, right?
Exactly
So
right.
she was feeling the relief without knowing why, right?
Yep. Yep.
So when, so we've decided and we're kind of like, okay, we're going to sort of give this, sort of thing away. I think
Mhm.
sometimes what also happens too is we sort of get into the perfection mindset of, feeling like, how can I describe it? Kind of like when somebody hires a maid, right? And they run around the house and they clean beforehand. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs feel that way too. Like, I can't hire somebody until I have everything,
In order.
perfect and in
Yep.
order, because they're going to
Yep.
come into this chaos. And then it's just like, how am I going to do it? Talk to us a little bit about if that's the case, what you should prepare for, those kinds of things.
It really tickles me when I get these individuals that that are interested in services, interested in hiring a virtual assistant, and they're just like, well, I don't have any SOPs, like I don't have anything written down. Do I need to like go back and get all of this set up before I can hire somebody? And it just makes me giggle a little bit inside because I have known 20 plus year businesses that still don't have SOPs in existence. And so, everybody kind of has this thing in their head like, I need to have everything documented. The beauty of a virtual assistant or any kind of assistance really is that they can create that for you. You don't have to do that beforehand. You can come with your hot mess and you can sift through it together. And that's really going to determine who you need to bring into your business, whether that's a virtual assistant, whether that's some other area of support. Like, what do you need when you are looking to hire, when you're talking to these individuals? Do you need somebody who has the capacity to maybe take a screen share video of yourself just going through this task, and they can create a written documentation of it, like in a written SOP? Can they take the tasks that you've been doing the past 18 months and improve it?
Mm,
Where do you need that support and assistance? Like, what level do you need? Because there's plenty of people that have various different levels of experience. And so that's really going to be key when hiring anybody, really, is figure out what you really, really need. At what level do you need? So then you can hire and communicate expectation well. And if that means growing together, if you hire somebody like, I've never written an SOP in my life, but I can figure it out,
yeah.
and grow together in that way. But you
Yeah.
have to be able to communicate that and figure out like, this is what I need.
Well, and I think a lot of times too, what happens is that, we feel like, um, this is the way that I do it. Right. And it's
Hmm.
not, it's not necessarily that maybe we think it's the best way, but it's just like, no, this is the way I want you to do it because it makes sense sort of
Yeah.
in my head. But I think that for me, that was the hardest thing to initially let go until I
Mhm.
realized there's always somebody who has like a quicker way of doing something, right? Like, I mean, it was
Absolutely.
like, I think it was just
Yeah.
like the other day that, that my assistant was like, if you just hit control and like the backspace, it'll delete the whole word instead of you just holding it down. And I was like, what? Like all these
Yeah,
years?
yeah,
Right.
all the
And she was like,
shortcuts.
yeah, right. And I was like, oh my God, you need to start telling me more of these things. Right. And it was just, but that was a hard thing to get over because you're used to it, right? This was your baby, you started it, you have a certain way that you do things, and it's hard to kind of like back off and realize, hey, maybe there is an easier way that's going to, save time, especially if somebody else is, kind of doing it.
I think that when it comes to perfection too, there's always kind of an understanding that, all of us business owners, we have a little bit of a control freakness in us, right?
That's
Control
usually
freak.
how entrepreneurship starts.
Absolutely. So I think there's this kind of understanding too, where First off, we do need to feel like we're in control in some way, shape, or form. But two, um, in relation to like, I want you to have it, I want you to do it this way and this way only. I there needs to come to a realization too that delegation is a skill set. Not everybody is born
Mm,
being able to delegate well. And the more that you do it, the better you get at it. That's when, you might start with, I want this done in this way, and then months later, years later, you're like, figure out the best way to do it. I don't really care as long as it gets done. And so being able to, trust the person that's, really handling stuff with, within your baby or your business, but also realizing that you're also a work in progress. And as you continue on delegating, your communication method's going to get better. You'll know how to ask for certain things, why you'd want to, like what kind of information you need to provide. That doesn't, I think we sometimes beat ourselves up thinking that we should know how to do this because we're business owners.
yeah.
And that's just simply not the case.
So we've sat down, we've decided we need help. We've figured out the main things that we're like, I don't want to do this anymore, or I'm not the best person to be doing this. I'm kind of doing it because
Yep.
I'm supposed to. What are some
Yep.
of I think what also happens is, especially in this, in virtual assistants, I remember when it first kind of became a big thing that it was really exciting, people were really skilled, and then it kind of got into one of those things where like everybody was like a VA, and you
Yeah.
know what I mean, it's like the person,
Yeah.
and I go, my previous life was accounting, and it was like I remember when like everybody was a bookkeeper, right? Anybody who did accounts payable or receivable, they're like, I'm a bookkeeper. I'm like, you are 100% not, right? It's like nope. That's like the janitor walking in and going, I feel like I could do this surgery. I've seen it a couple of times. But
Exactly.
so I think, that unfortunately we kind of went through, this thing where people were having bad experiences with it.
Yeah. Yep.
So, can we talk a little bit about what are some of the things that, even like maybe some questions or some things to be aware of when people are
Mhm.
like, okay, I want to go down this path, but what are some of the things that will help them to make a good decision so that they know they're getting the right person or the right company?
Yes, absolutely. Again, because virtual assisting has become a thing, there's so many options out there. The first thing that I always, always, always recommend is that you talk to multiple, VA services, whether that's independent virtual assistants, whether that's an agency. There's pros and cons to both. Really got to figure out, okay, what makes the most sense for you. Um, and so if you have multiple conversations with different services, then you'll have a better idea of what's out there, what's possible, how, and like just kind of the feel of what that working relationship is going to look like. And so it's really difficult when somebody comes in just, everything's aflame and they just needed support yesterday. And so they just hired the first person that sounded good, that said
Right.
the right things. And so that's usually a tough position for both parties to be in. The second thing that I would highly recommend is that if you're starting to think about hiring, you should start looking now instead of like waiting until, again, everything's burning
I
down to the
needed that
ground.
yesterday. Yeah.
Time. Yes, exactly. And then again, again, figuring out kind of what those priority tasks are that you want to offload so you can find the best person to fit those tasks. So there's so many people out there that will just say yes to everything. And
Yeah.
while we can certainly figure it out, and what we do is honestly not rocket science. There's kind of this, well, if you need something a little bit more specialized, chances are there's going to be specialized VAs out there that really have that expertise that you're looking for. For example, like if you are building out your CRM, you need somebody that's really knowledgeable in that program rather than just somebody who says they can build out CRMs. So those are definitely my, top couple of things that you definitely want to keep in mind, um, one last one that I always highly recommend is that so many business owners will go into a conversation of somebody who they might hire, and they're so like they're so itching to get started that they are willing to do like they're willing to work around the way that the virtual assistant works. And this is your business and this is your investment. And so the best way to communicate is your best way of communication, not theirs. The
Right.
best way you work, it should be accommodated by the person that you're hiring rather than the other way around. So please keep that, like I always say, like keep that in mind. You don't want to attempt to try and fit their way of working, around your business. It should be the other way around.
Yeah. Well, and I think that happens a lot, right? Because a lot of people are going, I know you're in the US and I'm in Canada, and I've had a lot of clients who are like, "Oh yeah, like, whatever. I'm using somebody overseas." Like that drives me crazy because I don't work that way, right? I need somebody who's in my
Yeah.
same time zone so
Yep.
that if something happens or whatever, there's something coming up, it's a lot easier. To deal with that. So for me, that's kind of like my hill to die on, I guess you would say. So yeah, and I think that's really important for people is to remember, yeah, you want to be able to find somebody who's going to fit into you, not the other way around.
Exactly.
Because then it's a lot easier for you, because otherwise then you're just generating frustration and
More
that
work for
added,
yourself, really.
yeah, because you're like, oh, this person's only going to contact me between the hours of 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. and I'm
Yeah.
going to look at it because yeah, we're not very
Yeah.
good at that. So, can we talk a little bit about the differences, more so in the benefits of like an individual versus somebody like yourself who has multiple people? Because I think sometimes people are not really sure about that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's pros and cons to both. When you're working with an individual VA, a lot of business owners feel like they're supporting another business owner similar to them. A lot of times, especially if they're catching them kind of early on in the building of their business, the individual or the independent VA might have more bandwidth to grow and scale
Right.
with, their client. And so it's it's almost kind of like this collaborative business owner to business owner feel to it that a lot of people really appreciate and like, and they want to support, a small business owner. Um, some of the downsides of working with an independent VA is, virtual assisting is definitely a stepping stone to a lot of people either niching, specializing, or even moving into a completely different career. So the one of the difficult parts is if the VA decides to go back to school, go back to an office, job, then they just completely lose their support and they have to start all the way over.
Mm,
And so that's probably the biggest, con to an independent VA. With an agency such as mine, there might be a price difference. We might be a little bit more expensive than somebody that you might be able to find independently. Um, but what you get with an agency is kind of a whole team backing you versus one individual. So we cover everybody's vacation times. If the VA needs to step away for a few, you're not in the lurch. We have somebody that can step into that role for you. So there's, not an interruption of support. And then you also like we can fit somebody with a virtual assistant. And let's say you throw a project at this person at the VA that they've never done before. Well, she has a whole team behind her.
mm,
Chances are somebody's worked with that program, has done that same thing or something very similar. And so there's definitely an internal support system that the VA has versus having to rely on their client to figure out like next steps. So that's also a benefit to an agency. Downside to an agency, again, probably like the price difference might be a thing. And then like similar to, we're not we aren't, what's the word where, we see turnover as well. And
Right.
the VA might, they go their separate ways, but the nice thing about an agency is that we will transfer that service to somebody else on our team, so they're not having to start over
And
from
find,
scratch.
yeah, and like find somebody new and all of that
Yeah.
other stuff. Yeah, that goes with it. And I think the vacation thing is like it, that's a really hard time. I mean, if you're lucky enough to find a VA that kind of takes the same time off as you, but it is
Mhm.
also nice to have, depending on the type of business you have, it's nice to have everything go when you go away, and you can be like, okay, I'm going away, but I know there's somebody still, kind of manning the phones, or I know there's somebody still answering emails, and I can actually
Sending
take,
invoices, getting money.
yeah,
Yeah,
and I can
exactly.
actually take that time off because it's something that you don't really get when you're doing it all by yourself, because
Yeah.
you always have to kind of have your ear to the ground.
Mhm.
You have some downloads for people that they can go to on your website to help them. Can you talk a little bit about what they'll find on there?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to virtualcathy.com, that's Kathy with a C, we have several downloads that are available. One is, one is actually, the independent VA versus an agency. So it kind of gives you the rundown, which we just discussed. There's one where it's master your time. So it gives you 12 most common requests from business owners on what we take off their plate. So if you're like, I know I need support, but I don't really know what to delegate first, this is a really good resource. It also comes with questions that you can ask yourself, like, what do you hate doing? What takes up the most time? And kind of thinking forward too, like what are you going to do with the time that you have if you are given an additional 15 hours of, a week or a month or whatever the case may be. So there's several things on the website that you can check out for sure.
I'm going to get to some shameless plugs because I know you have some interesting stuff coming up. But
Yeah.
first, I want to ask, because this is a question I like asking everybody. If you were to like think back, because again, we had talked about that a little bit about like, the hindsight part. Is there
Yeah.
something that you were like, gosh, I wish I would have handled this differently, or I wish I would have like kind of known this before? What is like one of your hindsight like light bulb moments?
Well, I have a lot. So, and I'm so happy to talk about all of the mistakes that I've made over the years. Um, you know, everything from, creating a company culture with just one person, one other person. You think that at this point it's just me and somebody else, and it's not really necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But it is, especially if you plan on scaling and adding more people to your team as time goes on. Day one, you should be creating the company culture that you want. That was my first big lesson in business back in 2018. All the way to, I scaled so fast that I actually ended up needing to downscale at a certain point in my
Mm-hmm.
business. I was not being very, I guess, prudent with how I was spending money. My team got very bloated for a time, and there were too many cooks in the kitchen. And so that was probably the hardest part in my business career so far, is when I had to downsize. And that was a really difficult time. It was sorely needed. And when we did downsize, it really allowed us to grow and scale responsibly.
Yeah. And I think that's a big one because I mean, I remember going through that as well, and feeling like, I think for me, like I think like embarrassment was the biggest one, because I was
Yeah.
like, I don't want to do this. Like I built this, and like, that fast growing that you're like, oh my God, this is great. Like we always
Yeah.
think that growth is
Good
always a
problem to
great
have.
thing. Yeah, this is like,
Yeah.
why are you complaining? But meanwhile, I'm like, because I'm absolutely miserable and I don't want to do this. And I'm like responsible for too many people's lives. And I
Yeah.
don't want to be, but it's still hard to be like, because you get that question of like, what do you mean you're giving up money? And it's like, but I'm falling apart. Like
Yeah.
money, sanity, I'm
Yeah.
trying to keep my sanity here.
It
Um,
really does. Yeah, the vanity numbers, it's a real thing. Like people think, oh, what, like vanity numbers, and it's not just like revenue. It's like, oh, I have this many people on my team, and it's said with such pride when it's like I'm barely profiting each month because my payroll's so, big. So it really does like, getting into the nitty-gritty numbers of your business is so necessary, and really having to come to terms with, okay, this was a pride thing, and you really have to readjust like your thinking about your business.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, it's such a good tip. And I think you have to do it like all the way along, right? Because I
Yeah.
remember first starting out and like that was the dream, right? Like make $1 million business. And it was the dream. And then
Yeah.
you get there and you're like, this wasn't in the brochure. Right. I didn't realize this, because we just think, oh, there'll be like so much freedom. And I was like, it's a lie. It was a lie.
Yeah.
Like, it was,
Yes.
but
It
we,
really is.
and I love that you brought that up because I think it's important for people to hear is that you get to
Yeah.
pick your level, of success. And that doesn't have to look like everybody else's. I had
Yep.
a client the other day who was talking about, I just wish I could say that I make, six figures. And I was like, you do realize how many numbers are in there though, right? Like that's from 100,000 to just under 1 million. Like that's a wide berth of it. But we just, we get stuck in that thing of thinking, oh, that is good. But I'm like, because there's a huge difference between somebody who's making, six figures, that those six figures are 900,000, and someone who's making six figures and that's 100,000.
Yep.
Like, and then
Yep.
she was like, oh, I never really thought of that. And I think,
Yeah.
I'm hoping that the culture is getting better, that we're saying it more and going, hey, like, let's remember reality. But it
Yeah,
is that vanity thing.
it's absolutely true. You think like, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna scale to the moon. I'm gonna have hundreds of people in this agency, and then I got to 25, and whatever it was, I don't know what it was, but man, everything just got exponentially 10 times harder
Yeah.
when you got to like a certain number, especially when it comes to like managing people. And so it just really made me think, okay, there has to be a different, more simple way that I'm completely disregarding because of my ego. So it's very eye-opening, and
Yeah.
you really do reevaluate, like, is it really like is the amount of people that I have on my team really that important when the profit margin is poor,
Yeah.
you know?
Or that now all of a sudden your time has gone up, and you're like, oh, now
Yes.
I'm back to more time. Like this is the opposite of what
Yeah,
I was,
that's
kind of
right. You're
trying to
working
do.
80-hour weeks and feeling proud of it, it at some point, yeah, that gets tough
Yeah.
after a
And I think it's,
while.
I'm glad that you brought up that, that's the story that you told, because I think people need to hear that more, that yes, it's hard in the moment of going, hey, like this isn't what I wanted, or this isn't what I thought it was. So I'm going to scale back. And that's okay, because then you hit that like nice stream of, you're like, oh, I like this better. This works for
Yes.
where I am right now. Because when I was younger, I
Yes.
didn't care. Like, I mean, I had like tons of people and I loved it. Like I
Yep.
loved the interaction. I loved the different personalities. And I loved like even like the HR stuff. I was like, I'm okay with this. I like dealing with this. And now in my late 40s, I'm like, I don't have time for your bullshit. Like,
It's so
I would not
true.
be able to do
Yep.
what I did like years ago. So I had
Yeah.
to evolve the dream and the goals, and that was a hard thing to do, because it was like you have this like set dream and you're like, I'm supposed to just keep going up, right?
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, it's a
I,
hard thing.
I I think that's also a really good thing to mention too, is like that vision that you have for your business changes over
Yeah.
time. 2 years ago, I took a huge step back out of my company, which was amazing that I was able to do. Like I was maybe working 15 hours a week. My management team was fabulous and took care of everything as I was taking care of like some personal things in my life. And then I realized though, after that kind of, resolved itself and I was stepping back into the company, it really did. It took me a minute. It took me a long minute to gain back the passion that I had for this
Mm,
industry and for my business. And it's so tough when you're like, here's this good working company, people are happy, things are happening. I'm barely a piece in the cog anymore, and I've completely lost my passion, but like I need to have passion for my business. And it took me a long while to get that back. And so
yeah.
it's that we all just need to just be nice to ourselves when it comes to these cycles in our business. It's okay to not like your business for a while, and figure out, okay, is this something that you want to continue on with? Or completely change up or step back into in a different way that really fuels your creativity and passion.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's so true. I think we need to give ourselves permission because we do it when we're in, a corporate, right? If we're not
Yes.
happy, we leave a job, we
Yes.
leave an industry, we move, and it's, people are just like, oh, that makes sense, right? Like I totally understand. But for some reason,
Yeah.
as entrepreneurs, we're like, no, we have to start this and then we have to do it until the absolute day that we die, and
Yeah. And
I was
have to
never
love
been
it
like
every
that.
single day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always been like, I don't like you anymore. We need to break up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes it was because it was a bad relationship. And sometimes it was just like, you know what? You're 18. I've grown you. Now it's time for you to like,
Yeah.
somebody else
And
needs to love you now.
and the beauty of business building and just business in general is that there really isn't anything like set in stone. There really isn't
Yeah.
anything about it that you really couldn't change. It might take a little bit of time, but
Mm-hmm.
you could change anything you wanted in your business. And so like if you are really struggling, like okay, change whatever it is you feel like you need. It's still your business and you still can have it. It doesn't mean that you just like, oh, because I don't know about you, but especially when I was working in executive management, I think I would like 4-year cycles, I would get bored with
Yeah.
whatever kind of position I held. So I would start looking for something new. Can't really do that with business, but you can change it to something that you love again.
Yeah. I started multiple ones because I would be like,
Yeah.
meh, like because
Yeah.
they do, it was for me, it was almost like an addiction. Because
Yeah.
that the thrill of the startup and getting everything going and getting it to the point where it
Yeah.
runs like super smooth, but then it would
Yes.
run
Yeah.
smooth. And I was sort of like, it was sort of like with kids, they get to this age where they don't really need you anymore. And then I was like, I don't know what to do with
Yeah,
myself
I'm
because
bored.
you don't need me, 18 hours.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of running itself. And then I'd be like, oh, let's have another baby. I need
Oh my
something else to
goodness.
take
Yes.
care of. And that I just did that with businesses instead of with kids. I was like, we would start up new ones, but the experiences were really good. I think it was just giving myself permission to go, I'm going to do this for as long as I'm super passionate about it. And then I'm either going to allow somebody else to become passionate about it, or I'm going to let it go and that's going to be okay. And nobody else needs to, it was just like me and my husband need to be okay with whatever that decision is. Everybody else, it doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
you don't have
Yep.
shares in this, your opinion doesn't matter.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
So what do you have that is coming up in what you're doing? Like do you have any workshops? Do you have any, openings? What is going on in your life that you're really looking forward to?
Yeah, I actually have a webinar coming up at the end of October on the 22nd, and it's like how to hire your dream VA. This is
Mm,
for people who have been kind of on the fence thinking about hiring someone, doesn't even have to be virtual assisting, someone in their business, and they're just really not quite sure where to start. And
right.
so I talk about all the just the basics of okay, where to look, what to look for, red flags and how to figure out for yourself what you need. And that's again going to be on October 22nd. I love this webinar. I love being able to be a resource for people that are just terrified of of hiring. And
Yeah.
so
Well, and I think it does become overwhelming because even if
Yeah.
if you're just searching it yourself, you're kind of like relying on whatever it is that pops up in the first, 4-1. So I think this is a good opportunity. We'll make sure we have all of the links so that people can join it. Because I know there's a lot of people who are like, I know I want to do this. I know that there's tons of people that I could go out there, but I don't really know what questions to ask.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I want to
100%.
give away, but how do I ask to make sure that this person isn't just, kind of being like, oh, yeah, no, I can do that.
Just being yes, I can do that.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
absolutely. I can figure that out. Right. And then, you spent the money, you've spent the time, and then you're like, this isn't what I
Doesn't work
wanted
out. Yeah.
100% at all. Like,
Yeah.
this is horrible.
This is terrible.
Well, thank you so much for, I think there's so many points in here for people to, to sit down and really kind of think differently about, how much is it actually costing you to not take this step, both in finances, but also in sanity, which is a big is
Yeah.
a big number that we need to kind of pay attention to.
100%.
And I
Yeah.
really appreciate all of your tips of like, here's some different things to kind of look at. And
Mhm.
then the webinar too, we'll make sure that we have the link for that, because I think this will be a good place for people to kind of be like, okay, I'm still not exactly sure, so then they need to head there.
Yeah. This is a great first step. Yeah. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you having me.
Thank you.